In the Middle Ages, people considered their work as a means of survival, work or die. To have a calling meant to do churchly work, be a priest or a monk. But the Reformers turned this philosophy upside down.
The very term vocation itself, of course, just comes from the Latin vocare, to call, and to literally is to call something. So the vocation is the sense that God has called you. He's given you this to do. It's a calling from God.
Now the term calling was a word that in medieval Europe had been restricted to the callings of the church. The monks, the nuns, the priests had callings. The other people did not.
For Luther, one does not have to leave society to follow God or to be honoring God, but one has to be involved in society. This is huge, especially when you think about the Middle Ages, when anybody who was going to be really serious about doing the God thing or kind of get right with God, you had to forsake family, you had to forsake connections in this world and go join a monastery. Basically, that was the track. You had to do the God track. And the idea of a person staying in this life and trying to be God-pleasing, that was just kind of like, you can't do this. So when Luther comes to the realization that, no, in fact, obedience to God means doing what God put you here to do, which means being involved in this world, this was huge. It was essentially redefining the entire culture he was living in. It was changing the way everybody saw everything. And instead of having to join the monastery to be serious about being right with God, I could simply be a good father.
Most of the population lived in the household, in the oikonomia. They were the farmers and the artisans and the merchants and everybody else. A small percentage of the population, though perhaps larger than we would guess in some big cities, at least 10-15% of the population, lived in the church. They were monks, nuns, priests. And then a very, very small percent lived in the political office of the rulers. And you had one area of responsibility. Luther came to see that that wasn't the case at all.
For Luther, vocations primarily are rooted not so much in your vocation as in your career or your occupation, something you do to get money. Your vocation's more into the thing that God has called you to do. And so for Luther, it's always grounded in family relationships. Who's my father? Who's my mother? Who are my siblings? And then where am I living? Who are my neighbors? What do I owe these people around me? That's where vocation starts.
We have family responsibilities, economic responsibilities, occupational responsibilities. We have societal responsibilities, and we have responsibilities in the church. And each one of us has a unique set of responsibilities to the family circle, the occupational circle, the societal circle around us. I think that's still very helpful in talking about the structure of life.
Your calling is your purpose in life, not merely the way you make a living.
Luther saw that the spiritual class, the priests, the monks, the bishops, were no better in God's eyes than the non-spiritual class. Well, then the way was open to view all sorts of vocations as ways to serve God and neighbor and to please God and neighbor. Let's say a baker wanted to serve God better. Luther would say, do a better job at what you do then. Make sure the bread is baked in a very fine way. Make sure you don't charge too much for it so people can't afford it. Make sure that your bread, in fact, goes for nourishment and that you deal fairly with all people. He would tell a mother, love your children and raise them up to be good Christians and good citizens.
The purpose of vocation is to love and serve your neighbor.
The real goal is on the vocation, your calling, no matter what. And I really define the difference as being, that's work, job, career, profession, and it has your name on it. You can switch professions, but if you have a vocation, you write out unemployment, you write out being overpraised or everything else. And that's at the heart of Luther's whole concept of life and daily life.
You know, people often credit the Puritan work ethic with the, America's greatness, but really the Puritan work ethic is just grounded in Luther's doctrine of vocation. Had Luther not given this, there would be no Puritan work ethic. It's not Calvin's idea, it's really Luther who's saying, go do what God's given you to do and giving you the freedom to do that.
But I think Luther's societal theory as stuck in the Middle Ages as it was, is still very dynamic and very useful for talking about the worth of human life and the dignity of every individual in our individual sets of callings. I think that works today.
God does not need our good works, but our neighbor does.